What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1705 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Yes, we are open. An award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Be at Christie Pitts June 6th for the first Friday Night Lights game of the season. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, returning to Toronto Mic'd, it's Scott MacArthur. So I had this idea. What's going on with Scott MacArthur? Scott's been over a couple of times. Listeners know him well from, TSN radio. Then they know him from the Fan 590. Then they know him from 1010, where he co-hosted the afternoon drive show, The Rush, with FOTM Rush Minaire. But then it was a baseball podcast, and we've talked about it on this program. Why Scott left 1010, sold his Toronto home, moved to the Maritimes, and was co-hosting a show with Richard Griffin called Exit Philosophy, which many a listener of my show tells me they enjoyed. But then Scott left that show, and then it's basically not off the grid. Scott will post occasionally on Facebook. But really, what's up with Scott? How's he doing? What's he up to? Curious cats, inquiring minds, we want to know. So here's what I have asked of Scott MacArthur. I said, Scotty Mac, FOTM Scotty Mac, let's have like a half an hour recorded Zoom just to check in. And maybe it'll be 5 minutes. I don't know how chatty Scott's going to be. I know Scott doesn't want to talk about everything he's already talked about. So we'll set the table, what we covered in this first episode. And a lot of that was coming out as a proud gay man, which was and is rare in sports media, as we discussed. So we did that. And then, of course, we had to talk about on his second visit with Richard Griffin, we talked about why he seemingly disappeared from 1010 and why he left the city. So all of that is in the second visit, and we'll cover this when he joins the Zoom. This is a long-winded preamble while I wait for Scotty Mac to join the Zoom. But what's a typical day like now for Scott MacArthur? Is there any intent to return to mainstream media in any form? From what I gather, he seems very happy. That's what's most important. I think we all care a great deal about Scott MacArthur. I know I'm jealous of his hair, and that's saying something because I know a lot of listeners are jealous of my hair. So I'm a big Scotty Mac booster, big fan. I like him personally. And when I hear that bell and I know he's joined the Zoom, I'm going to get my chance to check in. How you doing, Scott MacArthur? What are you up to? Why did you leave Exit Philosophy with fellow FOTM Richard Griffin? What's happening in your world? Now, this is going to be a All killer, no filler, like I said, 5 to 30 minutes, depending how chatty Scott is. So I'm just going to tell you right off the bat right now. There's an event at Great Lakes Brewery on June 26th, 2025, if you're listening in the future. 6 to 9 p.m., Great Lakes is 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard. You don't have to RSVP. You don't have to buy a ticket. No money will change hands here. Unless you want to slip me a 20. I'm okay with that. But you come to the brewery 6 to 9 p.m. You say hi to me. You get a chip. Your first beer will be on the house. Thank you, Great Lakes Brewery, for hosting and for buying all the FOTMs their first beer. Palma Pasta will feed you. So come hungry, darling. And we're going to just hang. We're going to soak in it. I'm predicting a wonderful Mother Nature day. And we're just going to hang. So we're going to eat Palma Pasta, drink Great Lakes beer, chat. We're going to mingle. We're going to, hang out, take some selfies, be silly, discuss the behind the scenes action and the TMU. It's going to be a great deal of fun. Just come by, say hi, enjoy. That's all I ask, okay? No ticket required. Speaking of no ticket required, I'm going to shout out Toronto Maple Leafs baseball because that action at Christie Pitts is also free. Free, fun events in the summer in Toronto. That's where it's at, as far as I'm concerned. Shout out to Nick Iones. I hope he will be at TMLX 19 on June 26th. That's a Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m. Listen to his great podcast, Building Toronto Skyline. Listen to the great podcast from Brad Jones from Ridley Funeral Home. It's called Life's Undertaking. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. And Recycle My Electronics. I love those guys. They buy the whole year up front. Give me 12 months, Mike. That's a partner. Shout out to recyclemyelectronics.ca. And last but not least, speaking of great partners, Moneris has an award-winning podcast called Life's... Will I fix that in post? Moneris has an award-winning podcast called Yes, We Are Open. Season 8's finale just dropped. All the episodes are Al Grego, who will be at TMLX 19 on June 26th. Al Grego went to Regina for all the episodes except this season finale. I notice he's back in Ontario. So be inspired with great chats of small business owners. Al Grego, Season 8, Yes, We Are Open. Thank you, Moneris. Okay, so that's out of the way. In real time right now, on a Wednesday morning, it is 9:29 Eastern. I know Scotty Mac is not in my time zone. So for him, it is now, I see the clock just switched over. It's now 10:30 a.m. his time. I'm going to check my email because where's Scotty Mac? I'm all jazzed for this chat. Okay. Checking email. I'll give you the play-by-play. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I don't need to check my email. Scotty Mac is here. So we're already recording. Let's see how Scott MacArthur, let's see how he's doing. Scotty Mac, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, are you fresh from the shower?
Pretty much, yeah. I have my whole neurotic morning routine, Mike, and that requires cleanup when I'm done, unless you want sweaty gym guy.
I don't, it's Zoom. I'll take sweaty gym guy. What do I care?
Okay, all right.
I can't smell you from here.
That's 2,000 Ks away. Might just be past that point. Yeah. How you doing?
I'm great. But what the FOTMs listening, what they want to know is, how is Scott MacArthur doing?
Well, I'm doing great. I've been a little whiny lately about the weather here. I've been asking the locals if this is like a true maritime spring, because you'll get the forecast and you'll see that it's going to be 20 and sunny, and then for some reason it's like 13 overcast and the wind is borderline hurricane level. And so I plan my day around being outside, what's going on. And having been here for a couple of springs, it really hasn't been like this, but I know you guys back in Ontario haven't had a great one either. but I'm doing really well. Things are going great, and this move has been excellent for me.
So you're in good spirits. You're happy with the decision to leave the Big Smoke for the Maritimes.
Yeah, the first time I came out here and visited,
Yeah.
I may have told you this story when I was in with Griff a couple of years ago. But the first time I visited, I came out here. Do you remember the name Sean Levine? You probably do. Uncle Shawnee. He was my producer
Right.
on TSN 1050, longtime radio guy.
Right.
And he moved out here during the pandemic. And so he was like, you got to come visit. You got to come visit. You got to come visit. And I finally did. And I had a day to myself while I was visiting. And I went out to the harbor front in Halifax, and I bought a coffee, and I just sat there outside the ferry terminal watching the ferry go back and forth from Dartmouth, which is about a 10-minute trip across the water. And I just people watched. It was a gorgeous day. I had a light jacket on, probably about 15 Celsius, sunshine. It was an October day. And Mike, I swear to you, having really not spent any time here in my life prior to that, I just said, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. And like, I wasn't talking myself into it. I've spent most of my life talking myself into things. I just felt it. And I'm like, this is where I got to be. So I made the decision.
And again, you alluded to it earlier, but the Toronto spring hasn't been anything to write home about either. I mean, this is like the second great day in a row, but I'm a guy who I find socks oppressive. Like I got to be in shorts and sandals ASAP. And I had to switch back. And I think 2 days ago, I was wearing pants and a hoodie on my bike rides. So, I mean, you're not missing out on this great Toronto spring.
No, I hear it from family and friends back there. And you find all socks oppressive.
Yeah,
you won't even ankle socks are oppressive.
Yeah, no, I don't like to wear any socks. And if I have my way, I won't be in a pair of socks again until like maybe November.
Okay, so how does everybody else feel about how you don't like wearing socks? You got a big family, Mike. I mean, they gotta stare at those dogs every day. Like that's.
I got great dogs. Okay, I don't.
Okay.
I saw your photo on social media recently, like a thirst trap. Okay, it's like
yeah, I saw your comment. I'm like, damn it, brother! Like, don't call me out.
But I'm like, okay, we get it. Okay, Scott, you got a good upper body. You're looking good, right? Like, meanwhile, I'll just show off my legs. How's that?
Beautiful.
I got a great ass.
I would not be a client, but I believe there's something out there for everybody, Mike, and you could probably make a lot of money showing those things off online. I won't be your agent or your business manager, but consider it.
And by the way, you mentioned you went on a date with yourself. Those are the best dates because you're always going to get lucky at the end of that date.
Yeah.
No comment.
I'm trying to come up with the. I mean, I know we're on a podcast here and not terrestrial radio. I could probably say anything, but I'm trying not to walk myself into something worse by responding to that.
I always tell people from the mainstream media, like, this ain't the CBC. Like, relax, it's okay. But let me set the table. You alluded to the fact that you were in this basement a couple of years ago with Griff. So let me just set the table to tell the listeners, this is like a short how's it going, Scott update here. This is not going to be a long one, and we're not going to cover ground we've already covered. So I want to tell the listeners that your first appearance, Scott MacArthur, on Toronto Mike, you visited in August 2019 for episode 499. Scott, you were so close to 500. This close.
I remember that, right? And because you had this dream of having McCowan be 500, right?
I thought 500, let's get the Bobcat. He's been on primetime sports for 100 years. Guys our age, listened to a lot of Bobcat on
sure did.
1430 and then 590. So I thought, let me do a deep dive with Bob McCowan, but he completely rudely just blew me off. Like, I'm sorry, but that never happened. But I should have made Scott MacArthur 500.
Oh, no way, man. You gotta go big 500.
I
No,
got
I'm good with a non-rounded number. Like, what is this? This is 1705?
yeah, 1705.
Okay.
That's a good number. So let me read the description. So this is what we covered in August 2019. Mike chats with Scott MacArthur about his years at TSN 1050, his decision to join Sportsnet and host Blue Jays Talk, his battles with depression, and his decision to live his life as a proud gay man. So that's the episode where we really dove into your decision to come out. And I know that decision has inspired others because people you've inspired have told me specifically that was a big deal to them. And, you know, you've been living outwardly as a proud gay man ever since. So that was $4.99. And that was a great episode. I loved it. But just to fast forward a bit, because we had a pandemic, you might remember that. June... Y'all jog your memory.
And it didn't make anybody crazy, did it?
Well, yes, I just realized the real talk on that is probably an off-the-record chat. But June 2023 was episode 1274. You came back with Richard Griffin, and it was episode, I said 1274. We talked about your departure from the Fan 590, working on The Rush on News Talk 1010, why you left 1010. So if people are tuning in to find out why you left 1010, I'm going to direct them to episode 1274. We talked about what was next for you, how you were doing, and we talked about, I don't even know if you had started it yet. Can you remind me? This is before you started Exit Philosophy with Richard Griffin, right?
Depending on the date, because we started in May of 2023.
Oh, this was June.
Okay, so we had just started.
Okay.
Like, we probably posted 2 or 3 episodes by that point then.
Oh, I think I was helping.
But it was it was almost right away.
Right. Okay. So I would tune in to Exit Philosophy. I liked the rapport you had with Richard Griffin. I like your take on things. So
you loved our microphones most, though, Mike.
I'm sure I've offered. I should point out there was no invoice attached to this. That's important. Like, people are like, "Of course you offered to help. You're going to send him an invoice." I actually don't roll that way. I offered to help for free because I just wanted Exit Philosophy with Griff and Scotty Mac, 2 great FOTMs. I just wanted it to sound as good as it could sound and to be like accessible.
Well, you were 100% right. And like, I could hear it, Griff could hear it, and we'd talk about it. But those were the first 2 microphones I bought online, and I think the Scottish side of me, shout out to my heritage. I'm actually going to Scotland this summer, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Wow.
Do a little family history tracing, but yeah, we are by reputation, fair or unfair, afflicted with the alligator arms at certain times, and I just couldn't quite reach for my wallet to upgrade for a while there. So that's what happened.
Well, Scott, my grandmother on my father's side is Scottish, so there's some Scottish lineage in my background there. And the joke I would hear growing up, which I would never repeat this for any other group with a stereotype attached to it, but the joke was, how do you count the number of Scots in Toronto? That was the joke. Do you know the punchline?
I don't.
You roll a penny down Yonge Street.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna steal that one.
You can have that one because I got it from a book or something. But so this was the with certain ethnic groups you were entitled to some casual racism. I remember Newfie jokes in a similar vein, right? Like, I don't know if these fly today, but this is how we rolled in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, but like, my history is Scottish.
Right.
And so I feel like I can sort of have some fun with that, right? Like, I'm not walking into a big problem here.
No, I mean, firstly, now I'm thinking of when Watley converted to Judaism for the jokes.
And that offends you as a Jewish person. No, it offends me as a comedian.
See, love it. Okay, so again, I'm here. I am thinking half an hour, but I actually want to talk to you for like 3 hours. But there is a note that came in from Sweet Edie on Blue Sky. Do you Blue Sky at all, Scott MacArthur?
I have a Blue Sky account. By the way, Mike, like, if we go past 30 minutes,
it's gonna be 30.
Okay. Well, if we go past, you know me, I like to ramble. Or if you get me going, I don't stop.
But
I do Blue Sky. I have not posted. I think about a dozen people have found me and follow me, but I actually Blue Sky to follow people who either cover the NFL or the San Francisco 49ers more specifically.
what's your handle on Blue Sky?
Can it be? Is it Scotty Mac Thinks, or would it just be? This is so bad. I've got to. Let me just pull it up here.
Pull it up there, and I'm going to read the question that came in on Blue Sky from Sweet Edie. Sweet Edie, and you can multitask because you're a professional here. Okay.
Allegedly.
Just wondering what Scott MacArthur is up to these days. I miss him on the podcast with Rich Griffin. So this is a big setup for you to tell us, why did you decide to leave Exit Philosophy?
Okay, and it is Scotty Mac Thinks on Blue Sky.
I'll tag you.
So, like Griff knew the outline of what I was thinking for me when I moved out here, and I kind of did things in reverse. This is actually something in my life I'm really proud of. Is I moved out here with way more questions than answers, and I just trusted that the answers would come, as opposed to, well, I moved out here for a job, or I moved out here for this, that, the other thing, and there's a purpose other than just loving it here. And so, obviously we were in touch all the time, co-hosting the podcast and planning episodes and things like that. And he knew that my plan was to go back to school. And so when I gained entry into or was accepted into my program in February of 2024 for a September of 2024 start date, that really sort of set the table for my exit. Now, I didn't tell Griff that at the time because I just wanted to see things, how they worked out, but a combination of the fact that I really was not enjoying Toronto Blue Jays baseball. I love working with Griff. I enjoyed the podcast. The doing of the podcast was fun. The watching of the baseball games was painful. And so by the start of July, I told him, look, I want to see the season through. I owe you that. I owe the podcast that. Devout listeners, I owe them that. So I will stay on until the end of September. But school is going to be extraordinarily busy, and I was not wrong. That was a correct prediction. So I just can't put my full effort into this, especially in the off season when things get kind of quiet on the baseball news front. I'm just not going to be able to lock in. So he had heads up, and as you can see, he came up with an awesome replacement in Mal Romanen, and I actually prefer listening to them. I prefer their dynamic. I think, I think if you go back and listen to the episodes, I would always check in with Griff too, Mike, because I was not enjoying the Toronto Blue Jays, and I really don't like that front office, and I have never hid that. And I felt negative. Now, what you heard may have been different, but it just felt off. So when I listened to Mal and Griff, I think Griff's sense of humor and Mal kind of plays off that really well. And so I think it's a better podcast now. That's just me speaking. And I've gone back to school. And through first year, second year begins the day after Labor Day. And it's amazing.
The obvious follow-up, because I am a CNN correspondent, okay? I'm a very accomplished journalist since we last talked, Scott MacArthur.
You're looking good, Larry King.
I need those suspenders, man. What
and
program?
Punch over.
Right. Caller. I remember he'd said, when Jerry was on, when Seinfeld was wrapping up, and Larry King said, they told him they canceled. Why are they canceling Seinfeld? And Jerry went off on him. Do you think we're canceled, Larry? Number one show, X million viewers. You think we're canceled?
Yeah, Jerry had no time for that.
I loved it.
No
Okay.
time.
What program are you taking? Like, what are you in school for?
So I'm taking a 2-year social services program at a college in the area. So I'm 1 year into that, and it went so well that I would never rush summer by, and I won't.
Right.
I'm looking forward to number one, the return to school, and number two, in the fall, the 49ers getting their shit back together. Um, and it has gone so well that the college having some 2+2 arrangements with area universities, I'm considering past next year when we graduate the 2-year college program. I'm considering transferring the credits and pursuing a university degree. So it's just been so good. And Mike, I developed a really good routine that prioritized my physical health. That sometimes involved waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning in order to get to the gym so that I could be well fed, I could work out, I could do this and be in class for 8:30. And I was just ready to learn, man. And I feel like my brain's been turned back on. I feel like for years, actually, it had stunted. And, looking back now, I can see that was a frustration that I couldn't identify at the time. It was just, hey, I go to work, I go home. This is life, right? This is what we do. We're on the hamster wheel. You don't really think much of it. You got bills to pay, a mortgage to pay. Going back to school and learning new things in an area that I'm interested in, and specifically the psychology courses that we were taught, has really just sort of brought my brain back to life. And, I can almost physically feel it, as weird as that might sound.
No, it doesn't sound weird. It sounds amazing. Like, is the goal at the end of this journey that you're going to be like a social worker or some kind of a psychotherapist? Like, is there an end goal here?
Well, I went in with the thought of being a mental health and addictions counselor, right? So that's, I guess, a specific, but it also is quite general when you consider just the wide scope of mental health challenges, addictions challenges. But what has come from this is also some volunteering opportunities. And the one that's had the greatest effect on me to date is that I'm doing some volunteering with an organization called the Seventh Step Society of Nova Scotia. And this is an organization that supports people who have been in conflict with the law or who are currently in conflict with the law. And when I talk about mental health and addictions being very broad scoped, obviously there's a lot that comes in under that umbrella. And there is a lot of that in the lives of those who have been in conflict with the law. And it's very inspiring to go to weekly meetings and share about my week, but also hear about the incremental steps that people are taking to change their lives and change the way that they make decisions. And I feel like I went in open-minded. I think I'm a much more open-minded person now than I was, say, in my 20s when I was hiding everything about myself, essentially. And so to see people actively make major changes in their lives on an incremental basis is really rewarding and inspiring. And so now I have an interest in, so when I tell you that, mental health addictions counseling may be one road I take, well, I now have an interest in potentially corrections. So there's like an endless array of possibilities for me moving forward here, based on the experiences I've been having.
Well, this makes sense to me because you're working with some vulnerable members of our society, our community, and it sounds like absolutely fulfilling, nourishing work.
It is. I've met, I went up to an engagement that Seventh Step was a part of in Truro, Arash Madani's hometown,
Right.
last Thursday, so 6 days ago. And I had a couple of people in my car who had a history of being in conflict with the law, but two people who have turned their lives around and now speak about their experiences. And this particular event was put on by Nova Scotia Works, and it was meant to illuminate the barriers that people with criminal records face when they come back into society and are looking for a job, right? I mean, there's stigma attached to that. Employers don't want to hire people with criminal records. And you would think on the flip side of that, well, if I've served my time, whatever that is, incarceration, probation, whatever, my sentence is over. I have hit my warrant expiry date. Why does this have to stick to me like a bad smell for the rest of my life? Right? I've served my penance. And, you get into the whole thing about how if you can't be accepted back into society and get work, you need to make money. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to turn to the ways you know how to make money. And a lot of people end up back pushing drugs and all that. But I'm digressing. I'm sitting in the car, I'm driving, I'm listening to these two tell stories about their time inside. And I'm thinking to myself, if you'd told me 3 years ago, living in Toronto, working in radio, that I would be in 3 years' time driving two people who had been in conflict with the law and spent time in prison to an event from Halifax to Truro. I mean, it's just crazy how the world works, man.
Well, this, when I pitched you this idea, pun intended, okay? But when I pitched you this idea, I was very curious, what is FOTM Scott MacArthur up to? And like listening to you talk with this passion and this work you're doing, it's inspiring me. You mentioned the name Arash Madani and you mentioned Truro. So a quick aside is that Arash lives in my neighborhood and like really close to where I'm talking to you from here in New Toronto. Mm-hmm. And when I was taking a road trip with the family, we were going to drive into PEI and we were making a stop in Truro. I called him, by the way, I'm Toronto Mike. I was calling him, sorry, it's tough to say. I was calling him Truro Arash. Try to say that fast. Truro Arash.
Truro Arash. It's hard to say Truro anything, I think. After.
Right.
Yeah.
So, rural juror. Okay. I can't even say brewery, okay? But, okay. So, bottom line is, he recommended a great pizza place in Truro, and we all stopped there for pizza, and it was amazing. So, shout out to FOTM Arash Madani. Okay. So, question for you. That's all great. Sounds like you're living your best life in the Maritimes there. Do you have any plans at all, like anything as you look ahead, any plans to re-enter Canadian media, some form of mainstream media or podcasting? Will you ever be a part of the media again?
Well, so, it's funny. I was actually thinking about some of the questions you might ask me, and that one came to my head. So I'm not going to necessarily belch out a pre-planned answer, but I think when you ask it that way, Mike, will you ever do something again? I'm hoping 3 weeks, a little more than 3 weeks away from my 46th birthday, that again is decades. Like I'm going to have some options here for a few decades, health, all that stuff. I'm not planning on going anywhere, and knock on wood that I'll be all right. And so will everyone else. So I can't answer whether I ever will again. I can say there are no plans at this time. It really is the furthest thing, or one of the furthest things from my mind. It's how would I get back in a way that interests me? It's very weird. I did not watch a second, and I mean it literally, a second of NHL hockey until Game 7 of the Leafs Panthers. I'm like, I gotta watch this. I mean, for one reason or another, right. I just gotta see if they're different or if they're not. And so then I'm starting to text people during that game. I'm like, I got fresh eyes. I have no right to celebrate if they win this game, and I have no right to cry in my cornflakes if they lose, because I haven't been emotionally engaged, haven't been following. But I do have fresh eyes, so I can tell you some things that if you're in it, you maybe can't see. And I was just texting a couple of people who cover the Leafs. I'm like, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I still see the stupid 2.5 line stretch passes to forwards whose asses are facing the opposition's goalie. There's no momentum up through the neutral zone. This garbage hasn't changed. So then I'm getting mad at that, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a reason I pulled away. I really haven't watched a lot of baseball this year, so I don't feel like I can contribute.
No. But Scott, not to interrupt. How rude of me. But I'm thinking of combining your passions. Like, you don't have to talk sports. You could, in fact, you don't have to reveal names. You could just have on people that you're working with who are comfortable sharing their. You could share the story of some of the people you're working with, and it would be an absolutely compelling podcast that I think would help a number of people. Forget the toy department that is, baseball and hockey.
Yeah, no. And so to get to that, there is somebody now. I don't know if I would be on the air for this, because I do think the most effective podcast, and we're talking about lived experience here, people, which is sort of the phrase we use at 7th Step for those who've been in conflict with the law. I think the most effective podcast would be co-hosted by, or sort of series of rotating hosts, people who have lived experience. And there's an individual, I won't name him yet, just because we've got to kick this soccer ball well further down the road, and I've got to get the technical stuff and all that lined up, and how can I contribute when school gets really busy in the fall and all that, to the behind the scenes stuff. But I think that there's an individual, and he's interested, who was in prison for more than 3 decades.
Wow.
Who would be a fantastic host. And so that those conversations in terms of broaching interest and all that have happened. But I can't sit here and make any kind of announcement, because it's like really in its embryonic stage, if it's ever going to happen.
But it's
right?
Bouncing around in there. So like these are, I guess when I speak of mainstream media, I no longer consider that like exclusive to terrestrial radio. I guess I'm thinking of some public broadcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, it's the old never say never thing.
Right.
I would say that I'm 99.999, add a bunch more nines on the end of that, sure, that I will never work for a terrestrial radio corporation ever again. And that's not even talking about whether they'd even welcome me. That's just not the life I want. I'm out. But in terms of podcast, in terms of being able to be creative, anything is possible. It's not my grade A priority at this point, but I do not write it off, and there are some possibilities down the road.
You were talking about your feelings regarding the current management of Toronto Blue Jays baseball, and I'm listening to you, and it's funny, my next guest on Toronto Mike, by the way, this is the fact I'm zooming with you is how much I like you. Like, I hate to do the remotes, but I'm like, I guess if I fly Scotty Mac to Toronto and then maybe he visits, so I say that's a lot. Here, we'll do a Zoom. But Keegan,
I'll cut you off, Mike. I'll be back for a week. before I go to Scotland. So,
Okay,
but
well,
that's like a month away, so it could be too close.
you know what? You in the basement here? Come on, we'll make it happen. I need to see that hair in person again, okay? But
I'm here for the Palma pasta.
I've got it for you, buddy. If you were in town for June 26th, I've got a free event at Great Lakes Brewery where Palma Pasta will feed you and Great Lakes will buy you your first drink. Like, I don't know if you're in town for June 26th.
I'm not in town until about July 8th, but June 26th is my 46th birthday.
You know, I now have a memory. We've had this chat in the past because my 51st birthday is June 27. So I'm pretty sure we've had this talk because I now remember how close we are to sharing the same birthday.
How do you feel, Mike, about the numbers, the way they're climbing? 51 and 46. That's that's happening fast.
What choice do we have, right? Like, I can't beat my head over something I have zero control over.
Yeah, the days are long, but the years are short, man. Especially as we get older.
And I mean, I saw your thirst trap photo, so I know you're in good physical condition. And I actually feel, even though I pop a couple of blood thinners every day so I don't clot out and have a stroke or whatever, I can tell you I've never felt physically better in my life at 50 years old. So, I feel good about the immediate future.
Well, I mean, you're in great shape, man. You bicycle everywhere. I love the thing you do too, where you take the photo of the bike. It's just like somewhere different in the city, right? So, hey, being active doesn't matter. Like I always say, people laugh. You're like, the thirst trap or whatever I posted, which is probably about 20 years old, 20 years too old to do that. But like, the gym is my place. Right. In the very same way that I have a lot of friends my age who love to golf. So if you're getting up for a 7:00 tee time and you're playing 18 over 3.5 hours, that's your passion on a morning. And for me, it's throwing a podcast or some music in my ears and going to the gym, and you love riding a bike. Like, it's just be active, in whatever way you like doing it.
Well, like Dick Van Dyke says, keep moving. I just got to keep moving. You got this kinetic energy. But here, I got to finish that.
It's worked for him.
It's worked for him.
He's 100.
Almost. I think he turns 100 in like December. I think so. Remember, Betty White didn't make it. Remember, they put out the 100 and then she died like a month before. So Dick's got to get to December to get 100. Hey, I got that thought I was on about visiting the. So my next guest on Toronto Mike is Keegan Matheson, who just published a book about the franchise Toronto Blue Jays. And Keegan's coming over, and it's already, we're going to have a great chat on Friday here in the basement. But I was very honest and clear with Keegan, which is, I'm happy to talk about Blue Jays baseball. I've been loving this team since '83. I want to talk Dave Stieb. I want to talk Cito Gaston. I want to talk Joe Carter. But I said, I'm pretty much going to stop my questions and interests around 2016. Okay. We'll let Edwin hit that, the bomb in the, what was that? The wild card series.
Wild card game.
Right.
Ubaldo Jimenez, the single. Yeah, it was a single game back then, right?
Right. Yes. So we'll like, that'll be like the end. And he's like, yeah, whatever, man. So like you, I'm so dismayed by this management and this lack of consequences and but how things change since Alex Anthopoulos. And we won't talk Blue Jays baseball here, but except to say, I've actually consciously decided to take a year off. And it's the first year I've taken off since '82, and I was too young and dumb to know really what was going on. Although I remember listening to the All-Star game that year, but I think that's like when I started discovering baseball. But all this is to say, I'm completely checked out of Toronto Blue Jays baseball for the first time in my life, and I kind of like it.
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't so much a conscious decision where I'm like, I'm going to make an announcement to myself and the world that I am not watching Toronto Blue Jays baseball.
Right.
This is a very small, so the Blue Jays thing is a very small part of my sort of grander approach, which is, do I like this? If the answer is no,
right,
I'm not wasting my time with it, man.
Does it spark joy, right? Like that condo thing, does it spark joy?
Yeah, like I'm just not, and I got at least to my east, to my west, and to my south, well, it's kind of south and west, I've got at least one really good beach within 45 minutes. Do you think that I am going to sit in my living room at 2:30 Atlantic time on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of July when it's 27 degrees Celsius and pitch sunny out there and watch that when I could be at the beach? I'm just not.
No.
Because, and Mike, I'm not going to get too existential here, but you and I have been talking our ages and long days, short years. I got news for you, which isn't exactly breaking news, but one day we're all going to be dead. So let's get to living, man.
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home.
Yes. If I die in Ontario, Ridley, Ridley, I need you. Come scoop me up.
We can ship the body back here. Okay, so last two, you've been amazing. Now that I know I might get you in the basement in July, I'm going to save the meat for that. I got a couple of quick hits on the way out. I know we're not talking about 1010 because you've already talked about that with me, and I already told people that's episode 1274. So pause, go back, listen, hear all about why Scott MacArthur left the Rush on News Talk 1010. But I can't get you on the Zoom without at least asking you if you've heard anything from your former co-host and fellow FOTM, Rashmi Nair, who essentially left the 1010 airwaves like 18 months ago and has seemingly, from my perspective, seemingly vanished from the planet Earth. Have you had any contact of Rashmi, and is she okay?
So no, I haven't. And Mike, I'll just tell you the honest story. It's not that interesting. I had no idea what had happened to 1010 or the goings on there until would have been April or May of last year when I was visiting my parents in Oakville. So I'd come home and my mom had said there had been changes at 1010. And I guess that was a few months after the changes. So I had no idea that things had happened at the time. Like it's really weird in the sense that when I got shit canned by the Red organization at the end of September of 2021, I pulled away from the business. I actually started applying to Ontario colleges a couple of months later, like November of 2021, for social service work, Centennial, Sheridan, and then up in Ottawa at Algonquin, where I had gone to school for radio. Like I had actually started to pull away then. In hindsight, like it was over then. I should have followed my gut and my heart and not my logic brain, which is you've got a condo in Toronto and you got bills to pay. I had actually started to pull away then. So when I left the industry, I just did what I did the first time, and that was completely pull away.
So no news for us on the Rashmi front. I have sent her a text just like as a friend and no reply. So I just hope she's okay. I'll just leave it there. I hope Rashmi Nair is okay because she's a very talented woman who I very much enjoyed spending time with. Okay. So on our way out, Scott, again, you were great. I took more than a half an hour because I'm a jerk. Okay. But I
ramble, Mike. It's my fault.
So on our way out, would you, and again, if I'm putting you on the spot, you don't have to, but could you give us a Macho Man impression for the road here?
Okay, but like I have to build it up for 5 seconds, right? Because you are putting me on the spot. So yes. So now I have to cut the promo, right? I have to come up with something. It isn't the voice, it's what to say.
Well, could you say this then? Because Paikin was just here for his exit interview. The agenda is ending at the...
Did he do a Macho Man impersonation? I would love to hear Steve Paikin's Macho Man impersonation.
Could you imagine? We could only be so lucky. But Steve Paikin did cut like an ID, like you're listening to the best who ever did it or something. Actually, I'll play it because I actually loaded it up. Just play it. And then you can do something like this as Macho Man. So here's Steve Paikin.
Hi, this is Steve Paikin, and you're listening to one of the absolute best. Here's Toronto Mike.
So let's hear a Macho Man ID for Toronto Mike.
Hi, this is Steve Bacon, and you're listening to one of the absolute best. Toronto Mike, yeah.
See, that's
Or we could do this. We could do this. We go, yeah, this is the Macho Man Randy Savage, and we're listening to Elizabeth's favorite, Toronto Mike.
I realize Zoom doesn't do it justice. So when you're here in July, we're going to spend 90 minutes where you're just Macho Man, okay? I would love it so much. But Scott, I love this. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Well, it's great to, air quotes, see you through the technology, and we'll look forward to sitting down in person and having some lasagna and some brew next month.
Recording stopped.
And that brings us to the end of our 1705th show. You can follow me on Blue Sky. I'm at torontomike.com. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, Moneris, Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you Friday when Keegan Matheson returns to Toronto Mike.